Welcome back, everyone. So today I'm going to be installing a under seat subwoofer in the car. Originally I was looking at one for the wife's smart car, just to improve the sound quality a little bit, because with the Mercedes it does come with the forward bass system. Although it is the base model, it does sound reasonably good quality, but you know, it is missing just that little bit extra on the lower end, of the scale. So I was originally looking for a sub for the wife's car, and I come across a Kenwood. I'll try and get the name here. kscsw11. It's just a little under seat subwoofer. It's about the same size as an A4 piece of paper, and it's about 70mm in height. Really small, compact unit. I think it's about 100 watt. I think it kicks out at 75 watt RMS. It runs on, it has a maximum current draw of 8.5 amps, which is absolutely tiny. Bearing in mind, sort of your normal style car amps run at 20-30 amp minimum. So it's really low on current draw. So I've seen people wire these off of the actual under seat or the car seat wiring harness. And I say usually with big amps you want direct power cable with like fused power cable coming straight from the car battery to the amp, which will limit interference and so on and so on. But today, because I've got the estate and the hybrid, my battery, although it's in the boot, it is hidden underneath the crash bar, some bits more framing, the fuse box and the cooling system for the hybrid battery. So it takes quite a bit just to get to the battery. Although you can see it, to get to the actual positive terminal, which is hidden right at the bottom, it's a nightmare. So I have looked. There is some spaces in the rear fuse box. There is one set of constant power, and there is also a set of switch live fuses in the boot with a couple of spaces. So my plan today is just to use some piggyback fuses, like I would do with the sort of dash cams and so on. Use one on the obviously constant power for the amp, and one in the switched live as the trigger switch or the trigger wire for that amp. So that's how I'm going to be doing it today. I know usually everyone will be like, no, power cable straight from the battery. However, because this is such a low draw, it shouldn't really have any interference from the power and from the car in regards to the speakers themselves. If they do, I'll probably just buy a really cheap inline interference blocker, like sort of magnet for the power lead. Although, like I say, it's rated at 10 amps, but it has a maximum draw of 8.5 amps, so it's really small, low power, so it really shouldn't suffer from interference. Again, like I say, looking at reviews online, it is a good quality amp. Shall we see how we get on in the car? Also, most of the reviews, obviously because it's an undercar seat amplifier or subwoofer, they are fitted under seats. With the estate, I'm going to put it in the boot, but it does only obviously have the fabric sort of rear on the top, so there shouldn't be anything stopping the sound quality itself. But we'll see how we get on today, and I'll explain through the wiring as we go along, because there's a couple of different ways you can wire it in, using obviously RCAs or speaker cable straight off the speakers, which is sort of your high pass input. And I'll explain as we go along. Okay, so in the box you get the sub itself. As you can see, what I've done, I've put it on an A4 piece of paper just so you can see how small it actually is. What else? So you get various mounting hardware. It does come with mounting brackets, so you can mount it up on the side or to the floor if need be. I'm going to be using some just velcro hooks, because I'm going to put the sub in the boot here. So it's got this nice carpet, so it's not gonna, it shouldn't move around a lot. Wiring comes with all-in-one wiring harness, one connector, and where you've got your power, your RCA connectors, your earth, and then your remote line. That's all in one. Like I say, with the RCAs you get this little wiring kit, which is so you can do an inline tap on your speakers to convert the RCAs. If your stereo does have RCA output, you can use aftermarket RCA leads. That isn't an issue at all. But I'm going to be using these leads off of the rear door speakers, but I'll explain to that as I go along. Just to make it a little bit tidier, because obviously with this cable being all over the place, I've just got some normal cable tidy that I'm going to put on, a couple of cable ties, just so if you were to see the speaker, it'll be nicely wrapped in black fabric. And like I say, to do the power, I'm going to be using the rear fuse box. So I'm going to have little piggyback fuses, one for the main constant feed and one for the switch live. Constant feed, I'm going to be using 10 amps, and the switch live I'm going to put a 3 amp in today because I couldn't find the smaller amps, but realistically you want to be 1.5 to 2 amps, really low, because that doesn't, all that is just a signal wire anyway, but 3 amps should be fine anyway. And we'll crack on. So first thing we're going to do, just to make it easier, we need to get to the cable run that's runs along the side. I'm just going to remove the rear seat, which is literally just a case of pulling up on both sides. So just pull up both sides, and that just pops out. Geez, I should have done that beforehand. I didn't realise how dirty the underside of this car is. Oh well, I'll just pop that to one side for now. All it is just so we can get to these cable glands that run into the rear of the car. Right, we just need to loosen these two panels because we need to get to the cable for the doors, which sit about there. This panel, it just pulls up. We don't need to remove this one. If we just move it up a little bit, it's on a little bit of a hinge there, but what we can do is just get to the cable glands that sit in there, and that just loosens this one off. Okay, so once this one's up, you need to loosen off this rubber bit, and that will just loosen up this panel enough. You just need to get to this cable harness, which sits just there. That should be able to just unclip on there, just so we can get to these cables here. What we need to get to, and I'll take a picture, is there's a grey pair of twisted cables. They are your speaker cables. The grey on its own is your positive, and the grey with the black line is obviously your negative. They are the ones that we are going to be tapping into for the speakers, okay? Right, just to make things easier, what I'm going to do is just remove this side bolster. It's quite simple. Torque 20 bit on this bolt here. Give it a twist. And then this should just slide up and pull down. There we go. And what you have on the side here, a little hook for this little brass hook bit there, and obviously your main bit there. For this, that's the cables then going into the back, which is nice and easy. And I'll just remove, or just loosen the back panel forward in a second. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, all I've done is obviously release the rear seat, so that's sitting down. All I need to do is just loosen off this panel just pulls out. It's got a couple of clips at the top. It is, however, held in. You can't remove the panel completely because it is held in by the bolts. One here, which obviously holds the main boot lining in above the hybrid batches and the rest. So what you can do is, it has got 2 clips, one there, one there, and if you just give it a tug, that unpops. But what it does give you is just enough room to slide the cables in through the back, come down, and then you can bang it into the back here, which just do this nice and easy. It's just a case of lifting up this on my one anyway, because of the hybrid, and then so what we need to do now is just remove these 3 pop studs, and then this just lifts off, which is just a cover, and then we're into the fuse box and so on. Okay, so what I've done here is, like I say, with these speakers, well, I've cut the ends off of this. This is so if you've got an aftermarket head unit and you've got in line, you can put the speaker terminals in line. All I've done is cut them off. The cable in itself, it's going to sit just up inside this little pocket behind that side bolster, which sort of sits into the rear behind on that side pocket. So these are the RCA cables. Like I say, you've got one for the right, one for the left. Like I say, with the grey twisted pair there, solid grey positive, grey with the black line is the negative. It is exactly the same on both sides, left and right. So what I've done, just using my clippers, just moved that, wired it, and then I've soldered the cables on and put the tape on. Then what I'm going to do then is just feed this cable down underneath here, under the carpet, through the trunking, into the back there. The white one I'm going to put underneath the carpet on the rear seat, keep that out nice out of the way, all the way along to the other side, and then do exactly the same on the other side with the left as I have on the right here. And then we'll be moving into the rear to finish off the rest of the cabling. So I'm going to quickly do that now, and then we'll get into the back of the car for the rest. Okay, so we're now coming to the wiring in the boot stage. As you can see, what I did with the wiring harness is to put that cover on it, so that the power lead breaks off into 2 parts, and then you've obviously got the RCA inputs, your earth, and then at the other end we've got the signal cable. I've already soldered the cable on and just wrapped it in insulation tape. I've done the same again with the power cable. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using this, obviously the rear fuse. Now, let's say the cables are going to sit behind this panel in there, and then just have that last little bit come around the front, and I say the amp is going to sit there. So what we're going to do is just pass the cables down through the top for now, through this little pocket in here, and it'll come and sit down here. So what I'm going to do is just pass the cables through into there for now. Bring that, let's sit that in there, and then we'll do exactly the same with the power cable. As I said before, with the fuses, 10 amp on the power lead, and this has got a 3 amp on the switch live. However, you would want to look at like 1.5 to 2 amps for that. So what we're going to be using in the back is these 2 here. So the purple ones on your right, now these are permanent live, and the pink to the left here, they are your switch live. Okay, there is several spare ones. What I would say is, with these piggyback fuses, usually top fuse, if you look at it like that, top fuse is the fuse that you're going to be adding on, or the circuit you're going to be adding on. So in this case, 10 amp for the sub. Now, and the bottom one is what would be your other circuit. So in the front, for instance, when I did the camera, yeah, that was a 10 amp, I think, because that was for the front power socket. So that would go in your power, your 10 amp fuse for your power goes in there, and then obviously this one goes in there. Because we're using spare circuits now, on the inside row here and here, now they have terminals. On the other side they don't. Okay, or so what I would say is do not put a fuse in there, because if there was a spare one and you are using a spare circuit, if the cabling is behind, you, within reason, or we don't know what, you can look on the schematic and work out where it's going, but you wouldn't know where that cable's going or what it was doing. So do not put a fuse in the bottom or anything in the bottom, so that you're not making the circuit live inside of the car. You're just making the circuit live coming out onto the cables that you wish to use. Because you might mess with circuits that we don't know really what they're doing or where they are, because if they're not being used, then there's a reason for that. So before I plug all them in, obviously we're going to want to plug the amp in, and also we need to do earthing whilst we're there. So what I'll do is I'll just fold this through. Luckily enough, I'll take some pictrs, but inside this cover here there's two really good earthing points. Just need a little 10mm socket, unscrew it. It's a really good chassis earth there for the amp. So what I'll do is I'll take a picture and I'll load that up so I can show you. Okay, so once you've wired all that up, I haven't put it onto the fuse box yet. I'll do that in a second. Once see obviously the earth and all that's together, RCA's are all connected together. I've wired the cable in. I've pulled the cables through, so they're sitting in there. So all we've got is this bit coming out. So, because realistically, if you wanted to take this out, you could just unplug it, and that's all you'd have. The only other thing that we do need is I'll just get it, is the remote lead. Now, with the amp, it does work without the remote. So here's the remote. Get it in focus. So on the top you see you've got the volume controls, then you've got a frequency controls. I'll try and get it in focus now. It's frequency controls between 50 Hz and 125 Hz, and then you've got the phase between 0 and flip it through 180. Now if you have the remote plugged in, it has all those controls. If you don't have the remote plugged in, the amp still works, but it's factory set to 125 Hz and 0 on the phase. So what I'm going to do is later I'm going to test both just to see how it sounds, because realistically it's got a long cable on the remote, but I don't know whether I want it to have it in there or just stick it somewhere in the boot that I can adjust if I want to, because realistically once it's on, and once I've tuned it in, I won't be touching it. As you can see on the back of the amp, I put a couple of strips of Velcro. Here's where the sockets are. Try and get it in there, focus again. So you've got the power socket and the remote, and then just to sit above that you've got a little cable clamp there. So we're going to plug that in and then see how it sounds, and then plug in the fuses and then see how we get on. So for now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to be connecting the cable clamp, because what I want to do is be able to get the remote in and out, just because I want to test how it sounds. Like I say, with that Velcro, that is not going anywhere. So I'm going to throw this remote lead through, because I'm going to test it from the front. I'll shut up the door, the chair. And there we go, that's sat nice and neatly in the boot. So I'm going to connect up the two fuses now, and then we'll give it a test. Right, so I'm going to do a quick review now of this Kenwood under seat subwoofer. Like I say, I've got the remote in at the moment, just so I can turn it on and off. You don't need to have the remote in for it to work, but it will be set to the factory settings, which is 0 on phase and 125 hertz on the frequency cutoff. So what I'm doing, I'm leaving it at 0, but I'm going to put it at 50 hertz to start with, which is sort of medium scale sub bass, and then once I've tried it a couple of times on that, then I'll whack it up to the 125 hertz, which sort of sits medium range for normal bass frequencies. So we give it a go. I did try and upload a video last night, however I picked the wrong song and got smacked with copyright issues. So I've got like a generic unlicensed song just to try it on. But it has got, the bass is slightly boosted, and I think it's to 60 hertz, which sort of sits in the middle of the frequency for this subwoofer, because I think the lowest frequency this subwoofer is 35 hertz, if I remember rightly. So we'll give it a go. Let's have a go. Till the bass kicks in. It's got a small amount of intro on this song. The volume does go up slightly with this song. So this is with the bass off. I'll leave the bass on. But because it's such a small sub, I do think the bass sound is a little bit muffled at the 50 hertz cut off. I'll wait till it kicks in again, and then we'll turn it back on. So this is with the sub offset at 50 hertz. Sub back on again, you can hear the difference at the 50 hertz. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn it back off and then set it to the factory settings of 125 hertz on 0 phase. I'm going to turn it up again, so this is with it off. So from that you can see that that small sub does make a difference just to the lower end bass. Like I say, it won't shake your car to pieces. It ain't going to make your mirror go all over the place. But it does add that extra little bit just to the lower end of that bass. I'm going to sit with it at the 125 Hz 0 phase. I will run it without the controller in. Mainly because I don't want this everywhere. And I don't, with the music and the way I want the music to sound, at factory settings, it just adds that little bit extra that I needed, just to improve the sound a little bit. Especially with the Mercedes having the front bass system anyway, as standard, even though on the factory standard stereo. So what can I say? The sub is tiny. I mean, you can literally fit it anywhere. I've put it in the boot and it is taking up zero space whatsoever. If you were to install it horizontally up on the back rear, one of the rear chairs, for instance, off the floor, you wouldn't even notice there, and you could still use your boot and it won't affect your boot whatsoever. And obviously there's more than enough room underneath the seats for that speaker. So for £100, it's definitely worth the money. Just if you want to add that little bit extra to your speakers. Like I say, if you want to rattle the car and do some right deep bass, it's going to be your normal standard, like, well, separate amp and subwoofer, where you're looking at 8, 10, 12, 15, whatever size you want, where you're talking thousands of watt. With this one, like I say, it's about 100 watt, I think it was, which is about 65 to 75 RMS. So it is really low. And as I said before, obviously the way I wired it into the car is not your normal way of wiring it in. However, the amp for the Mercedes, when you have the Burmeister system, is the same power, and that obviously has its own dedicated circuit off the fuse box anyway. So realistically, I haven't done anything different than Mercedes do in regards to the amp, only because it's so low powered and so small. But it's definitely worth a go. I am going to buy another one and stick it in the smart car as well. So I'll do a video in the future on fitting it, as well as how it sounds in the smart car. Which again, well, so that has got standard speakers, but it won't have, because I will be upgrading and adding the complete 14 speaker package for the Smart for 4. Well, hopefully if the video was helpful, please give it a like. Obviously subscribe to the channel. So I've got lots of good videos coming up, more on the Mercedes. I've got the GT Panamericana grill, and I've also got the C63 quad exhaust and diffuser pack. I have that. I'm working it out as we speak, because the standard bumper is slightly different than the AMG bumper for fitting, but I have looked at that, and I just need to find some time just to fit it, which will coming up very soon. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.